like y'all are getting entertained here. So this speech here, and I know y'all heard from some of my predecessors in the past. Dave Manning, TCW, has talked to your group in the past. As chairman of the American Trucking Associations, we very much enjoy going out, giving the message of what we're doing in the industry and what's important to us going on in Washington, as well as going around across the states in the trucking business. So that's kind of my update today. We'll start off with infrastructure funding. We have been promoting as an industry to invest in infrastructure. You've heard as recently as this year that in Washington, there's a move to additional infrastructure. We dropped a bill in the House about a month ago now that's got some robust spending. The problem with Washington is that they love to say they want to spend the money, but yet at the end of the day, they don't say where the money comes from. So we've been testifying in front of Congress. I had the pleasure, although it was Zoom, and again, I apologize for not being there in person today. As we all know, we can't gather too much in person these days, but I did do a Zoom presentation before the Senate Commerce Committee. I also testified in front of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee. It gives us an opportunity to keep front and center with Congress on what's important to the trucking industry. And certainly we were talking about the COVID-19 and how the important role that the trucking industry played in its entirety and continues on to this day. We gave testimony, saying how important it was for us to keep movement as an essential industry. My comment to Congress, and I'll make it to this group here, is, nobody knew just how important trucking was until you didn't have a roll of toilet paper sitting on your grocery store shelves to buy. So that kind of brought it real and home to everybody on just how the trucking industry is essential for all of us. And certainly we're delivering the medical supplies to keep the hospitals moving, that the doctors keep on testing. All those things get moved by trucks. We know, as sitting here as a Memphis World Trade Club, commerce, international commerce is important to all of us on this call here, but we are the movement that keeps America moving. We are the people. The trucking industry is what keep people day to day in their comfort zone and able to do the things that they do here. So we have the trucking industry, American Trucking Associations, has long advocated for the last several years for additional funding for infrastructure. We know that for every dollar that we spend in infrastructure, it comes back to the economy, it comes back to the country many times over that investment. But the one thing that we do as an association is also give answers to Congress. We don't just say, build me more roads. We tell them how to fund it. And with that, we have and put on the table for an additional 5 cents a year for 4 years straight, additional sales tax on fuel tax. Yes, it would cost us additional 20 cents extra at the end of that 4 years. Yes, it would cost a motorist additional 20 cents after the 4 years on a gallon of gas, just like it would be on a gallon of diesel. But we're willing to put the money where we say it should come from, number one, and how to do it. Number two, we want investment in infrastructure, and we're telling Congress we're willing to pay our fair share. We're not walking away from it. We're not putting the problem somewhere else. We're offering a solution. To this day, there is still no consensus in Washington on where additional funds for additional infrastructure is going to come from. The current infrastructure spending is going to run out. There is not enough. People are driving less these days. Even though there's more people and more cars on the road, more trucks on the road, the overall spend is less for fuel. So we know it's a disappearing fund, if you will. It's diminishing. But we feel for the next several years, if not 10 years, this is the best way to fund additional infrastructure. So it's not only just for the efficiency, for congestion, but it also has for driver safety. You know, we've got surveys that say an average motorist spends about $1,500 a year just on damages to their vehicles because of infrastructure problems. You know, I can tell you firsthand, you know, I used to drive an Escalade, went over a pothole in New Orleans, busted the rim, busted the tire. I had to get it towed. By the time I got it towed, bought a rim, bought the tire, I was over $1,500 last year just on my repair. So certainly those numbers are true and fair to give out. There's another one here that we were promoting, and some may be familiar with this on this call, some may not. When you buy a new truck, there's what they call FEC tax. We get taxed on a tractor up to 12% from the federal government. This dates back right at 100 years right now to the end of World War I. It is a regressive tax. It disincentivizes the industry from buying new equipment. So we have proposed, as part of the COVID-19 package, and this was proposed before they came out with the legislation, the first recovery package and the second one. Now they're looking at a third one right now. We still have it as a proposal that will help enable the trucking industry to buy newer equipment in a more robust way if we were able to suspend the FEC tax for the rest of the calendar year 2020 and until the year 2021 as kind of a holiday, if you will, on that tax. We have promoted this to Congress. It is still a discussion item now on the next recovery bill. Obviously, as people have seen on the news lately, there is a big dissension, not only between the House and the Senate, but also in the President Trump. So I don't think either of the three branches, if you will, has any consensus right now on this, although we are expecting something to be moved in the next week and a half. So there's a lot of compromise to be done along the way here. We'll wait and see, but we certainly are promoting a holiday for the FET tax on purchasing new equipment in the trucking business. We also have, and you've probably heard about this on the news as well, reasonable protections against excessive litigation. You know, we are one of the essential industries that were out there from day one, as the healthcare industry was. They have received protections from litigation for being on the front line. We fully expect and are asking Congress to grant us the same thing. You know, we ran our truck drivers day in and day out from day one till today. We brought our office people in as much as we had to. We brought in our mechanics. We brought in the people that we needed to do to keep trucks moving and to keep the economy moving. And with that, we certainly put our companies and our people on the front lines. And quite frankly, it was a lot scarier for a lot of them. And with that said, we're asking Congress to give us some protections for the good actors, the ones who is trying to do the right things, the ones who's keeping a social distance, the ones who's doing, you know, following protocol at our customers' doors. And we feel it's only right and justified. We have asked that in the next legislation. So there we are, the House infrastructure bill that came out about a month ago now. $1.5 trillion. That's the wish, that's the ask. 494 billion, almost a third of it, is going back to the surface transportation, other infrastructures, water, rail, you know, you name it, everything else concerning infrastructure, pipelines is also included in that infrastructure plan. So we feel it's a great start. We feel it's something that we want to work on. It is not a bipartisan bill yet. The Senate has not taken up this yet in a meaningful way. Obviously, they're trying to get through the COVID legislation first. So we're advocating on both sides, the House and the Senate, to come together as a bipartisan bill. Infrastructure is not a Republican or is not a Democrat item. It is one that is for everyone. And we've been saying that time in and time out. So Some of the things that ATA worked on the infrastructure bill on the House side, side underride guards is a big thing that some a limited number of safety advocates are pushing. That's basically a mechanism underneath trailers so cars can't go underneath the trailers. Well, at the end of the day, the cost factor doesn't equal out to the safety factor of it, and we were successful in keeping that out of the House bill. It did come out, and it's going to be a huge topic, and we can talk about that more later in my presentation, is the minimum insurance. Right now, trucking companies, depending on the segment of business that you have and what type of freight that you haul, the bare minimum insurance right now is $750,000 per accident. Well, there is a push in Congress, there's a push across the country, depending on who you talk to raise that minimum insurance. In the House bill, it's got a $2 million mark. Well, in principle, the trucking industry is against raising the minimum insurance, and we'll describe that and talk about that a little bit more in my tort litigation conversation later in the speech. But we're not running away from the conversation. We feel we need to be at the table. We need to feel we want to be reasonable about the request, and we need to make sure that the request meets the needs of the American people, as well as the trucking industry. So it's a conversation that we will be having going forward. But it is extremely concerning to the trucking industry on how to move forward with this process, whether it gets increased or not. We are part of the conversation. This group here, I know, in previous conversations with Dave Manning a couple of years back, intermodal is a big conversation. Memphis is a huge inland port. We've got a lot to talk about here. So let me proceed forward. If anybody's got any questions on infrastructure right now, make sure you send them over to David there, and David, just chime in whenever you want. This intermodal section to me is going to be the most critical for us to have a conversation about today. So here we go. Intermodal Motor Carriers Conference is a part of the American Trucking Associations. As David mentioned, I was past chairman of that group. I'm no longer chairman today, as I am the chairman of the American Trucking Association. So I'm still integrally involved with the IMCC. And these next several slides, some people on this call may be familiar with some of this information already, as y'all have had a lot of input from Commissioner Dye and the Federal Maritime Commission. Some people may not be overly familiar with the exact details of what I'm going to give you today. But I welcome conversation, I welcome input, I welcome some direction, quite frankly. I think that there's no secret around that the drayage community hasn't always been aligned with the ocean partners that we're in business with in intermodal. And it has reached a certain level of frustration. And I think you will see that we're taking, from our standpoint, some positive actions to correct this right now. All we've ever asked for is to have good partners in the system, whether it be railroads, whether it be ocean lines, whether it be freight forwarders and custom house brokers, whether it be shipping partners, beneficial cargo owners, BCOs. All we've asked for is just to be good, reasonable partners in the system. And we believe that there are many instances, and there are several examples of how the ocean lines are not acting in good faith. And here we go. So we have been part of the group, and we're not alone, that has been questioning going to the FMC, discussing detention and demurrage fees. Demurrage being charges at the port, at the railheads. Detention, in my terminology, is per diem, right? I don't know how the word detention all of a sudden changed from per diem on containers, but that's what we use now, detention and demurrage. We have asked Congress from day one on the COVID recovery to impose rules upon the ocean lines not to charge any type of detention or demurrage while the initial shock, the initial month or two of the pandemic, so we can get freight moving. We had a lot of customers that shut down, could not receive, didn't have staffing. Everybody was told to stay home. But yet we've got freight that was already on the ocean coming in and nowhere to go to. So we did not get any kind of legislation in place, but we certainly made our voices heard throughout the industry, that we feel that that type of fee, if you will, especially during the COVID pandemic in the early stages, was an unreasonable one. So if anybody on this call here has examples where you feel you are either the customer or representing the customer, that you may have had unfair charges along the way, I might have a suggestion or two in this conversation. So we all know the FMC has taken on a greater interest, if you will, in all of these types of fees and charges. We know those of us who have been in this business for years and years know that the ocean carriers have taken what was supposed to be a cost deferral system. You know, I can go back to the 80s and 90s when per diem charges first existed. It used to be nothing, and then all of a sudden it was a couple of dollars a day, $2 a day, $3 a day, which was technically the cost of the unit that was being used or extended free time. So now all of a sudden the free time gets shortened along the way, and now all of a sudden there's fees, not just, you know, dollars, not tens of dollars, but hundreds of dollars each day being charged. And it changed from a cost deferral system to now it's a profit incentive system for the ocean lines. And there has been no checks and balances along the way to prevent this from happening. So we have approached the FMC as well as other business groups, shipping groups, and asked them to look into the problem. They've come back, they've done their studies, have come back. And now, you know, as you can read on the screen, the FMC interpretive rule in detention and demurrage. Are the fees reasonable? Well, reasonable to you and reasonable to me and reasonable to the ocean line may be three different things. We'll find out. A commission will consider the extent to which the detention and demurrage charges policies serve their primary purpose, right? Are they really doing what they're supposed to, or really is it a profit center? You know, the ocean lines historically have not been able to make what they feel is enough profit on their own business, but yet they're going to, you know, put other fees on to try and make up for their deficiencies in their freight rates that they don't feel that they're getting compensated for. I mean, I'm not one to say yes or no on whether they're making profits enough at acceptable levels, but don't put it on accessorial type charges and make the motor carriers or the shippers or the freight forwarders be collection agencies for them. That to me does not seem like a fair and reasonable process. So with that, I'm going to minimize my screen because I'm going to show the audience here a couple things. And with that, I will show you the, let's see here. Looks like I lost, no, there we go. This is an email that I received from Tyler Rushforth, our executive director at the Intermodal Motor Carriers Conference. Those of you who would like to get his contact information, you can see his email up here. He has helped fellow Intermodal Motor Carrier members file claims to the FMC. And what I have here is a link to their website, of which I'm getting ready to go to now. So I'll give you an example. If you feel as a shipper or as a freight forwarder or a motor carrier, anybody in the supply chain dealing with ocean carriers and dealing with detention and demurrage fees, if you feel that you have been either in error or you feel that the fee is excessive or not deemed fair along the way, we now have an appeals process that anyone and everyone can go to, and it's on the Federal Maritime Commission's website. Tyler Rushforth can help you get to this point. If you want to take down the link to the website while I got it up right now, please do so. David, if you want to pass this along later on, I can certainly forward you Tyler's email, and you're more than welcome to forward it to any members that you'd like. It's got a link to the website. We now have an option, and I'll give you an example of a case that was already won. It was already won by a motor carrier, a member of the Union Motor Carriers Conference, filed a complaint where he had, I'm going to say multiple containers, maybe 15 containers that was late to be released at the port facility from the ocean lines. That release came on a Friday afternoon, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know the circumstances of why it wasn't released before that. I'm not trying to mislead anyone, but he felt that release came too late in the day on Friday. He was unable to pick up all of the containers on the booking. And by Monday, his demurrage bill hit over $15,000. He felt it was excessive. The freight was held for ransom, so he couldn't delay in paying the fee. So he paid the fees to get the freight released, picked up the freight, and then he filed a complaint at the Federal Maritime Commission saying it was excessive, abusive, and that it was unfair. I have not yet filed a complaint, but in that particular case, that motor carrier was reimbursed his demurrage charges that he paid. He paid it in advance under duress, filed the complaint with the FMC afterwards, and won the decision. So we now have examples of how this system may be working effectively. It may not give us all the answers. It may not give you the answer that you may want to hear, but at the end of the day, we have a place to go to now that we may not have had before. So I would invite anybody and everybody who feels they have a claim that may not be fair in your minds to use this process. I think the more as a community we use this process, the better we're going to get a feel for what will it cover, what will it do for us, and maybe what it won't, right? So I invite this group in particular to take advantage of this information here.
Hey Randy, quick question from the group here. This is a good one. So in ATA's view, I guess you'd speak on behalf of ATA here, how do we move from the FMC's interpretive rule to industry action to make changes in practice?
This is it.
I mean, that's like, is it monitor outcome? Are there stats out there on conversion rate? That's available.
This is how we continue the process. That interpretive rule, you're right. What did it do for us? Well, it's getting us to the stage here where they're willing to take a look at our complaints. And we now have a venue to file a complaint, right? Before, if you had an issue with an ocean line and a fee, whatever it is, right? All you had to do was go to the ocean line and plead your case. And we all know how effective or ineffective that may be, depending on the circumstances. And it, at least in my case, I'll use my personal reference, I very rarely got satisfaction out of that type of activity. Me as one motor carrier, to them as one ocean line. I've even been through the process through the UIA and dispute resolution. I've got nothing that I could tell you in a positive way from my standpoint through that process in a meaningful way, especially when you have got a grievance against an ocean line concerning detention or demurrage. We all went through the West Coast slowdown issue. We didn't get any relief off of that. It came back down to, did you file your grievance quick enough? Did you do this? Did you do that? That whole UIA process in my mind is more about what you may not have done from the letter of the law and their rules compared to who was right or wrong in the particular case and listening to the facts of the case. So again, this is a new venue, if you will, with the FMC. And I truly believe the more we push it as a community, it can't be just the truckers doing this. I need the shippers involved in this. We need the freight forwarders involved with this to see how we can push this further and further. David, did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I know for a fact, the FMC publishes when there's fines and penalties against, freight forwarders and violations on NVOCCs. Is there any, based on what you've heard, any expectation to where they may even publish large wins and cases that go through this channel?
I don't know that for an answer. I don't know. Let me make that note, and I'll send that over to Tyler to see, whether maybe there's a listing going forward that someone can be, we can look at the cumulative listing of the cases and the responses and the answers and the resolution one way or another. And then maybe we can see whether like cases can be, processed faster or not. I'll send you a note later this week to see. I just don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions right now, David?
Just one more. I want to make sure we knock them all out here. Some good questions. I know, Stan, you had asked really on the insurance. I think you're going to get into the insurance commercial requirements on the tort reform, but one thing related to infrastructure came up before we move on that I think would be good to cover. Really a two-part question. I'll combine two questions here. So specific to infrastructure, what priorities did you identify that support the freight economy? And then the second part would be, how has road conditions affected trucking efficiency related to infrastructure?
Well, certainly I'll answer the second part first, and that is it affects us. We spend billions and billions of dollars each year in congestion. And certainly that has been a driving force. I didn't load it up on these particular slides, but there's a dollar figure out there, and it's mind-boggling on how much the trucking industry spends in congestion every year. So it's an extremely costly issue for us. And as far as do we designate where the money goes? If you saw that slide, and let me try and go back to it, and I'll give a little bit color to it here. The infrastructure slide, you see 1.5 trillion infrastructure plan, and then you see a 5-year, 494 billion surface transportation reauthorization. That 1.5 trillion is not just for roads and bridges. That is, as I described before, it's for waterways. So you got some port related and some dredging issues in there. You got some lock issues on the river in there. You've got all kinds of infrastructure money in this robust plan. Okay. So we didn't designate as a trucking industry, I need and want 1.5 trillion all going to roads and bridges. We just are advocating, we want our fair share out the big kitty, right? And if the big kitty starts getting cut down more and more, we're going to want our dollars in there first as opposed to our dollars in there last. And we're doing that and making the statement that we're willing to pay up for some of it, right? That's where that 20 cents over 4 years comes from. Is that making sense? Did that answer your question?
I believe so. Stan, let me know if, and Michael too, if you guys have any follow-ups along the way here. Thanks, Randy.
Okay. All right. Any other questions in the hopper right now?
I think we're good right now. We'll let you hit up on the reform advocacy that you're working on.
All right. So here's another big one here, folks. And those of us that's been in the loop, the motor carriers, those of y'all who have been involved, I know there's been a big shippers group in Memphis concerning chassis and usage. I am one of the founding members of NATPAC. So, this is not a NATPAC initiative. This is an Intermodal Motor Carriers Conference initiative. But the statement all along has been from the motor carrier industry, which is, if you're going to make me supply the chassis to the customer and make me pay the bill for it, in turn, invoice a customer for it, right? I should be able to choose what chassis provider I use. Don't dictate to me terms and condition from the ocean line to the motor carrier if in fact I'm the one paying the expense and I'm the one has a relationship with the shipper on that particular move. With that said, we have sent already legal actions to OSEMA, which is the ocean line equivalent of ATA. OSEMA is the Ocean Association, with all the Ocean Line members. We have sent them a cease and desist letter already on May 4th. We are telling them, as we have for many years now, with no, if you will, meaningful sitting down at the table and discussing and trying to resolve this issue, that we feel this is unfair, it's illegal, and we're now intending to take action. And you could tell everybody in the industry, the motor carriers are financing, we are financing this litigation, and we're not going anywhere. We are sick and tired of the ocean lines signing up their own deals, whereas they're forcing the motor carriers to use a certain chassis provider at certain designated rates that are more favorable to the ocean lines and unfavorable to the motor carriers. We pay one price, they pay a price that's significantly less. I'm not talking pennies, I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking 75, 80% less than what motor carriers are having to pay, because they the ones who's cutting the deal, they the ones who's forcing the motor carriers to use their designated chassis supplier, and the expense that we're processing is at their savings. As you can see in this fourth line item, we have estimated this to be a $1.8 billion price tag just in the last 3 years of excessive funds that the motor carriers having to pay third-party chassis providers because of the contracts that they are signing with the ocean lines. Then the ocean lines are requiring the motor carriers to use those third-party providers at the designated rates that we do not have any type of influence in on, no negotiations on, no nothing. We're just being forced to use it. And all we've asked for all along to the ocean carriers is we want to be fair partners. And we don't believe we have been. So we've got next steps. There will be additional legal letters coming out, and they're coming out soon, as in the next week or two, because even with our cease and desist letter that came out on May 4th, we still have yet to have meaningful conversations with the ocean carriers on how we can move past this egregious system, if you will, against the motor carriers. Dave, we got any questions on this one here? If not, I'll move on and you can catch up to me later, okay?
Yeah, we're good. I know it's a hot topic, though. I know there's some people that feel
Absolutely
passionate about it in this group. So
yeah, and that's why I'm saying don't hold back on me, right? Whether you agree with me or not, doesn't matter. We can have a conversation about it. So if anybody's got any questions, anybody's got any suggestions on how we can make further progress with this, you know, I will make this statement too, that we as motor carriers, and not all motor carriers agree with this, but I'm telling you, as a group, Intermodal Motor Carriers Conference, as a group of motor carriers, drayage motor carriers, and by the way, some of our members, some of our leadership now are the largest of the large motor carriers across the country. And we are aligned in saying that we not only agree that the motor carriers should be responsible, the motor carriers should be willing and able to do their own procurement of chassis, but we have also incentivized BCOs to do the same thing. We're not afraid of that. If you want me to procure the chassis, you want me to process the bill, you want me to take care of all the provisions and all of that, then yeah, I'm going to get in a bill and I'm going to process it, and I'm going to put some sort of fair margin that can be negotiated with you and every other motor carrier on what's fair. But if the BCO wants to take on that responsibility and you reap the benefits of whatever financial incentive you may have, and you process the whole contract, hats off to you. We have always promoted that idea. We are out there for safe, efficient chassis. That's what we want. We want commerce to move. So keep that in mind as we go forward with our conversations here.
And now we got a question. All right, good.
All right.
There, Michael, I knew you'd have a question about this. He was asking who else is supporting IMCC's C&D efforts? Like who are you guys partnered up with, shipper organizations, et cetera?
From the legal standpoint, we're the ones self-financing the whole thing right now. You know, we're looking for coalitions. You know, part of the shippers groups, and quite frankly, I don't remember the names of them. Y'all may that was aligning with us to the FMC in those petitions on detention and demurrage. Those groups are supporting our efforts, but we are single-handedly right now financing this whole legal effort right now as a motor carrier industry. We believe we've got a lot of supporters in our philosophy, that's for sure, but we're the only entity right now that is taking this aggressive action. You know, we've been through the discussions at the UIA level and sitting down with their executive committees and saying, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And we're still sitting here now in 2020 with no resolution to these problems that we've been talking about for 20, 30 years in that group. So we're done with enough talking. Now's the time to take some action. And that's where we're at. But I will say this, we're looking forward to any type of coalitions. Get a hold of me, get a hold of Tyler Rushforth. You know, if the Memphis World Trade Club wants to throw their support behind us, even if it's not financial, certainly it's meaningful to have groups like yours that's behind us in philosophy. And we're more than willing to take your input and quite frankly, maybe help us get to an end goal, right? You know, we're not saying that we know everything, but we're certainly saying that we've been frustrated enough to try anything right now. Fair enough? Any other questions, David, right now?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. I know we're approaching already 45 minutes. You want to go on and talk some more and end it up at 12:30, or do you want to end it here and get any more questions? Up to y'all. I've got, as I told you, David, I'm loaded up with enough slides to talk all afternoon. I don't want to take up all y'all's time.
No, let's go till 4 o'clock. What do you think? No, I'm just kidding. So let's, I like this next section. I know you're passionate about it. I think you've got some good examples. So let's keep rolling through this. So
we'll talk about this topic again. I've got a bunch of slides loaded up, but let's be clear here so that the shipping community on this call right now fully understands the duress the motor carrier industry is under. And it's not just drayage, it's across all boards, whether you're LTL, truckload, short haul, long haul, drayage, tanks, reefers, flatbeds. I don't care what business you're in trucking, dump trucks. Everybody is facing this issue now. School bus drivers and school bus companies are in this big time right now. We have been the focal point. The motor carrier industry has been the focal point from the plaintiff's bar. They have discussed and they have targeted us as the weak point. And we've reached a level now that we probably should have done a whole lot more with this topic many years ago to try and slow it down or to try and prevent it from coming on board. But it's at a crisis level right now. Motor carriers, every time they're going for renewals right now in insurance, they're getting a shock. So if you hear it, shippers that's on the call right now, freight forwarders, brokers on the phone, when you hear, hey, you know, my rates are going up because my insurance is going up, it is a true story and it's across the board. I don't feel, and I've called out some of my fellow truckers in the past and still doing it today, that there has been some segments, whether you consider it large or small or one type of trucking versus another, whatever the case may be, I think the motor carrier industry in the past may have used cost of insurance and cost of litigation to their own benefit. If they thought they were doing a better job than their competition is or was, they may use that as a competitive advantage to get more business, to be more profitable. But I truly believe the whole industry now is aligned in the fact of, I don't think anyone is immune. I don't care how safe your truck line is. I don't care what your accident percentages are and your legal procedures are in the past. It's catching up to everybody now. Large, small, doesn't matter. We are in a crisis mode. The American Trucking Associations has recognized that. This is the first year we have elevated this problem to what we call our tier 1 priorities. It was done, quite frankly, when I came in as chairman. I came in with this initiative knowing that our industry is in trouble. So we've identified it. We have grouped together. We are going out there to our customers. We're going out there to the industry, and we're going to fight back to the plaintiff's bar. You know, I've got specifically in my neck of the woods in New Orleans, which I would consider one of the worst, if not the worst, areas for litigation in the entire country. And again, I'm saying this today, knowing that everyone else is bad as well. There is no good area anymore. My particular case here, and if there's motor carriers on the phone on this call, if you have any accident in Louisiana in the past several years that you feel was a staged event, a wrongful event where that vehicle may have hit you or trying to get you to hit them, whatever the case may be, if you feel you fall into that category, you get a hold of me, because we're fighting back. I've got a case already at the U.S. Attorney's Office. My particular case was, I had it on camera. It was my camera on my truck, along with the camera of the business on the corner, that showed the staged accident. This thing was staged. And it was so out of the box that not only was it staged, but the person who set it up, listen to this clearly, the person who set it up actually got on the phone with 3 different attorneys before the accident took place to bid out the litigation after the accident took place. So this particular person staged the accident, bid it out so he could get the most money for it, then had the accident. They actually hit our truck. We have evidence, and then gave the accident to the person who was bidding the most. It's a plaintiff attorney who bid the most to have the accident. We have that at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The FBI is in the middle of it. I'm the second case. I was not the first. I'm the second case that they are prosecuting with this. They have already prosecuted out of my case, out of the 4 litigants, 3 of the 4 have already pled guilty. One of the 3 that's already pled guilty admitted they were not even in the vehicle. They were not in the vehicle that got in the accident, but yet claimed they were, got represented by the attorney, got sought and received medical treatment, and then tried to sue me to get money. This is such an outrageous event. People are asking me, are you gonna make a movie out of this? You know, heck no, I'm not gonna make a movie, but I tell you what, I'm not gonna stand down and lie down and let this stuff go on in my city. That's for sure. So, you know, we are prosecuting. We're not gonna stop just at the plaintiffs. If these attorneys helped in the staging and committed crimes, I am asking and pushing anybody and everybody with information that we're going to the U.S. Attorney and the FBI with this. I want them all to go down, including the medical field, if they were part of this whole thing. So keep your ears to the ground. I'm knee deep in water on this whole topic. As far as what we're doing at ATA, we're bringing in all the stakeholders. We're going around the country. We're showing, we're fighting back against the plaintiff bar. You know, it is not right to say, oh, I hit a truck, so now I'm retired for life. You know, that's my deep pocket. I'll get my get out of jail free card, and now that's it. We're not trying to run away from making a wrong a right. If a legitimate accident happened, we're trying to fairly compensate those who are involved. That's not what we're saying here. But what we're also saying is that if it was an incident, that we're not going to keep on rolling over and keep writing checks left and right for demands that are unreasonable, making plaintiff attorneys richer than all heck right now. That's not where we're at, and that's not where we're going. Insurance rates are out of control. The nuclear verdicts, you've heard that term already. You know, a verdict that may have come out in years past that may have been X number of dollars is now 100 times X. That's not right. That's not what we're going to stand for. 8, 9, it's just insane the amount of money that's being given out by juries and the plaintiff attorneys reaping the benefits of it. And it's going to come back to the shippers, as y'all well know, on this call here. I'm telling you now, If you get phone calls from your motor carriers and saying, hey, look, X number of dollars, X cents, X whatever you want term you want to use is being increased. And by the way, it's because of insurance cost. It is a true and accurate statement. So we want everybody involved with this, right? The more pressure from the BCOs, the more pressure from the community standing behind us as motor carriers, the better off we're all going to be. Otherwise, you're not going to have many motor carriers to pick from. Everybody's going to have to roll into the big ones because that's the big ones, the only ones that's going to be able to process the claims. It's that bad out there right now. Again, I've got slide after slide after slide. I've got another 5 or 7 more minutes here. David, we got any more questions coming up? Anybody's got any issues? I mean, we're gathering up a litigation campaign at ATA. All we want to do is fairness. Couple other thoughts to put on this. We know this is not going to change overnight. We know this is not a quick fix. There is no silver bullet to say do this and life's great. It's going to be multi-years. It's taken years to get to this point. It's going to take years to get to a better place to be. Here in Louisiana, we passed this year an omnibus tort reform bill. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we got 4 or 5 things that's headed in the right direction. And it was done with the heavy Republican House and Senate and a Democrat governor. And it was the trucking industry that stepped up to the plate and made this happen. So that is an example of how progress can be made, however difficult it is. Take what you can get now and come back and get some more. You know, Tennessee's got a great association up there. Dave Honeymaker up there does a phenomenal job. Y'all have got a great environment. You got great infrastructure up there. You got a great business environment, but you're not going to be immune to this litigation issue. Tennessee will be affected. It's coming. It's here now.
Randy, there's one question out there. I wanted to kind of, you covered some of it, and I know there's a widespread effect across the industry on this, on the insurance specifically. Is there a measurable and noticeable impact on maybe one market versus the other, or one mode, like intermodal, OTR, or local, that's getting hit the hardest on stuff like this?
I will say this, you know, and I'll use the example in New Orleans with the fraud, okay? And fraud is fraud. I knew I had a local issue, and there was 2 or 3 draymen in New Orleans who are good friends of mine that I knew had the same problem I did. What I didn't know was until I had some meetings at ATA with, and I'm just naming in general here, so don't hold me specifically, but you know, UPS was in the room, FedEx was in the room, Werner was in the room, you know, YRC was in the room. Every major motor carrier, truckload, you know, JB Hunt was in the room. Every major, not every, but a lot of major motor carriers, whether it be LTL, truckload, didn't matter. I brought up the topic, and my statement to them was, guys, I have a problem in New Orleans and I need help from a resource standpoint. I need to know, what can y'all help me to learn to do better, right? I'm just a small town guy. I want to understand. And what I didn't know, David, was everyone in that room already knew from their own operations, New Orleans had a fraud issue, and several of them were already taking legal action that we piggybacked off of to get to the point we're at now and still progressing together. So to answer your question is there a particular segment that's hit worse than others? I would make this statement. I think everybody's getting hit. Now, I will also say, you know, whether it's legitimate accidents or legitimate litigation or fraudulent, right? I'm going to throw the whole piece into one hat here and say it's all litigation now and it's all affecting us. So as we look from state to state, right? Louisiana is very poor on the fraud issue, but we're not as terrible under a nuclear verdict issue as Georgia may be or as Texas may be. And you're thinking back, well, maybe that sounds to me like 2 states that would be pro-business, pro-transportation, and shouldn't have an issue. That's simply not the case. So I think the litigation issue is across the country. It may be more significant. You may find in the state of Tennessee that you may be more at risk in Memphis than they are in Nashville. Maybe, but the state of Tennessee is not immune, or a community is not immune to the litigation problem. The plaintiff bar itself passes along notes. This is documented. They teach each other, hey, I won by doing this. You should do it next to the next motor carrier. They coach each other in how to doing better and better. We've been getting our butts kicked. Now we recognize it. Now we're rearing back, and now we're gathering up, and we're finding ways to fight back. We're finding ways to litigate better on the defensive side. And we're also going to get out there, and we're going to find legislation to help our cause to do better in our tort reform issues. We're even looking at judgeships, the election for judges. It makes a difference in what judge is sitting in what seat. That answer your question?
Oh yeah, it's a deep topic. Definitely a dynamic issue for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting to time here. I think I wanted to definitely tie this in for the Memphis and New Orleans area relationship. Just quick question: what's going on between maybe the Mississippi River tie-in? I know there's some things going up and down the river. Any market developments or anything you could share with the group related to Memphis and New Orleans trade? I
will say this. From my understanding, David, there are going to be significant new avenues on the Mississippi River that the Memphis World Trade Club would definitely be interested in. And I think you will be hearing details coming out in short order publicly. So I would look to the river to be even more robust than what it is now. And I would think that the river would be competitive with rail coming off the East Coast and West Coast. I think you will see that there is a strong potential for the pendulum to change on distribution lanes. For those of us who's been around a long time, a lot longer than you have, David, and your crew there, but those of us, I made my living back in the day for freight moving from New Orleans to Memphis back and forth over the road. And that north-south axis was robust at the time, only to lose the freight to East Coast or West Coast along the way through the 90s and the 2000s. I think you're going to see that pendulum potentially swinging back north and south again, and I think the river is going to be a major component of it. Did I leave you enough taste along the way? I didn't give any enough details, but
little teaser for what may be breaking.
Little teaser. There you go.
That's awesome. I just threw out a last call for final questions to the group. We got one or 2 minutes left, but we did have a question come up. I know to kind of close out here in terms of driver hair follicle testing. Are you in favor, support of that? Has the clearinghouse actually worked like it's supposed to?
That science is there. I believe it to be even a more accurate testing than the current methods being used. American Trucking Industry, ATA in particular, has and still fighting to this minute in DC to get this approved. It is not the hair testing is not one that is being asked of to replace. It is only being asked of to be in addition to the current urinalysis. So yes, I'm in favor of it. Yes, I think it's going to happen. Yes, it's been a long haul in Washington. But I do believe that you'll see more on this activity in the next couple of months than you have been in the last several years. It's been a frustrating experience in Washington. As they look to approve hair testing, it's not just for trucking. They got to approve, when they approve hair testing for transportation, you pull in all modes. So you got the railroads, you got the airlines, you got everything else involved in it as well. And rather than just the trucking agency, FMCSA, it's DOT in Washington, and it's been problematic. But I still think it's going to be a doable event, and yes, I do believe in it.
Cool. I'll quit hiding behind the Memphis World Trade Club logo for a minute and kind of close things out if that's cool. I don't see any final questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to funnel them through myself, or anybody within the World Trade Club, and we can definitely get those answered for you.
Right.
I think Randy, I dropped the FMC link that you shared with us today in regard to resources, and then if any additional follow-ups, please do share. A lot of good information. Appreciate your time.
David, send me an email, and I'm going to respond to you with Tyler's email that'll give you that link as well as Tyler's contact information.
For sure.
You can disseminate it to whomever you'd like to Memphis World Trade Club.
Great. We'll absolutely do that. Cool. Well, Randy, thanks again for agreeing to be with us today. And I know you always have a bunch of great information to share. So, on behalf of the club, I really appreciate that. And we'll be looking for more stuff to hit the news wire soon based on some things you shared today. And then kind of closing out for the club here, anybody has any questions related to the club for the balance of the year, stay tuned to your email, send me a note, send a note to Lindsay at memphisworldtradeclub.com as well. She can help facilitate that. And then we can also continue to move forward as a club. So we can't do it without membership. I know it's been a weird year so far, but, excited for what we have in store to improvise. And so with that said, everybody have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. See you, Randy. Thanks for.
See you, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, man. See ya.